Weaponized incompetence. It is directly linked to insecure attachment as well as narcissism. And out of the insecure attachers, it is avoidants that are the most likely to use weaponized incompetence against their partner, particularly dismissive avoidance. But first, let's get into what weaponized incompetence is to begin with. Weaponized incompetence is the intentional failure to perform a task correctly or to perform it at all, especially if it's a task that you don't want to do and you don't want to be accountable for. Let's say you hate doing the dishes, so you intentionally fumble the dishes and load the dishwasher the wrong way. That way, your partner gets frustrated with the fact that you can't seem to load the dishwasher right, so they just take over the duty. And boom, you avoid accountability. You don't have to do it anymore. So, it is intentional manipulation of the other person to get them to do something that you don't want to do. And you get to escape accountability in the process. So, how is this and why is this directly linked to insecure attachment? Let's start with that first. Avoidants are the most likely to use weaponized incompetence. And this is because their preferred method of dealing with something that they don't want to deal with is to not deal with it. It's to avoid it. This is a person that received consistent emotional neglect in childhood, not given that love and nurturing in the way that they needed, but they were never shown how to deal with stress, to deal with crises, to deal with anything that's unpleasant to them. So they had to figure it out on their own, and what they learned to do is to avoid it, to just not deal with it. So they have something they don't want to do when it comes to the relationship, when it comes to household tasks. Well, they can find a way to avoid it by intentionally doing the task poorly or just neglecting the task altogether, so their partner has to deal with it. But it also creates emotional distance between themselves and their partner. Emotional closeness does not feel safe to the avoidant. They feel a lot of anxiety with emotional intimacy, but they feel safer with emotional distance. It's because of this core wound of shame. They personalize that neglect from childhood, growing up to feel defective and broken and unlovable. And their subconscious fear is if they get too close, they get too vulnerable, they lower their walls, their partner's going to figure out that they are defective and not lovable, and they're going to get rejected. But if they create emotional distance, they get to keep those walls up, keep their partner on the other side of the wall, which helps them feel safe, because if they can keep their walls up, they feel like they're not going to get exposed as being defective and not lovable. So, weaponized incompetence creates emotional distance because it frustrates the other person. It can create arguments, tension. And when you're not showing up for your person, it's hard to build intimacy like that, because when you are really showing up for this person, you're showing up in many ways, including basic household tasks or other things like making sure the checkbook is balanced, making sure that the children are picked up on time from school. All these different things can be weaponized, and they're weaponized for the purposes of avoiding, but also creating emotional distance, as well as avoiding accountability, which are all the MO of a dismissive avoidant or a fearful avoidant that leans heavily dismissive. But they're not the only ones that can use weaponized incompetence. Anxious attachers can too. But for the anxious attacher, the motivation is a little bit different. They are far less likely to use it, but some severe anxious attachers can. And that is to get validation from their partner. Because if they fail to do the task properly, but their partner picks up the slack and does it for them, well, look, that shows that it's reassurance. Their partner's there for them. They become dependent on their partner, which helps them feel safer and risk less abandonment, right? Because one of the core fears of an anxious attacher is the fear that that rug is going to get pulled from under them. And if their partner is stepping up and making sure that these tasks are being done for their daily life, it's a little form of reassurance for the anxious person that they are cared for, that they're being taken care of, and that their partner is validating them by showing up for them because they can't complete a task properly. And disorganized attachers, fearful avoidants, can go either way. The ones that lean more heavily dismissive can use weaponized incompetence to create emotional distance between themselves and their partner. But the ones that lean more anxious can do it for the more anxious reason, to get that reassurance that this person is still invested in the relationship. Now, the most likely, though, to use weaponized incompetence are narcissists. Unlike an insecure attacher who genuinely does go into a relationship seeking love and connection, even avoidance, they're not able to maintain it, but they do want it at some level. Narcissists go into relationships seeking narcissistic supply. That is the attention, validation, power, and control that a narcissist feels entitled to. They need to be in the power position of a relationship because it makes them feel important. It makes them feel in control, and they crave that. So using weaponized incompetence gives them the chance to control their partner, to be able to get this person to do their bidding, to do the things they want them to do, including menial tasks. And if they can get an emotional reaction out of their partner, it makes them feel powerful too. Because if they're able to get under the skin of their partner and make this person upset, it means in the narcissist's mind that they have power over this person, that they can control this person, that they are relevant. Plus, it also gives them the chance to get sympathy supply. Oh, I'm sorry, it's so difficult for you. Oh, I'll do this for you. I care about you, which gives the narcissist supply. It also helps them play the role of the victim. Look, all this stuff is put on me and it's just too hard and it's not fair and no one's thinking of me and my partner's so mean, and they can get supply from that angle as well. It helps them avoid accountability. It helps them get in the position of power and control, and it helps them get attention, especially in the way of sympathy. And ultimately, a narcissist is only concerned about what they want. So they don't want to do something, they're going to find a way to get out of it and then blame you and control you throughout the entire process. But weaponized incompetence does generally not come from securely attached people. People that have a true sense of self, people that are emotionally available, are far less likely to use it. Because one of the core components of emotional availability is the ability and the willingness to empathize with your partner, to care about their feelings, their wants, their needs, and their perspective. If you're weaponizing incompetence, there's no empathy in that because you're not considering how this makes the other person feel. You're not considering the frustration and the extra burden that you're putting on their shoulders. No, there's no empathy. The person that is doing weaponized incompetence is only thinking of themselves and what they perceive that they want or feel in the moment. So there is a degree of a lack of emotional availability through weaponized incompetence. And yes, that can include severe anxious attachers as well, because again, there is no empathy in weaponized incompetence. Now, it is true that men are far more likely to use weaponized incompetence than their female counterparts. But women in relationships absolutely can use weaponized incompetence too. It is not exclusively a male activity. So both partners can do it, but the people that do it are more likely to be insecure, possibly even narcissistic, and emotionally unavailable due to the lack of empathy. But if your partner is using weaponized incompetence, you can hold a boundary being your limits of what you want, don't want, what you need, don't need, what you'll tolerate, not tolerate, and what your expectations are. Because if you suspect that they're using this against you, or you have proof that they are, you don't have to accept it. You can hold that line in the sand and say, this is how I feel about that. This is what I need. These are what my expectations are, and hold to it. Because if you're not holding boundaries and you're giving in and you're catering to it, you're enabling that kind of behavior. But if you're holding your limits, one, they're less likely to do it because they're not getting away with it. And number two, if they refuse to respect your boundaries and they refuse to put in effort, well, that gives you the opportunity to step back and say, does this relationship even really work for me? Because this person is not concerned about my feelings, my needs, and they're not concerned about showing up for me. And that really says a lot about their emotional availability for you. So, raises questions to think about, because you care about them, their perspective, you care about their feelings. You deserve the same in return. Hold your boundaries. It is your sword and shield, your protector.